Welcome, everybody. We have begun. This is um, AI Readiness Training for Enterprise. I'm your host, Jose Garcia. This is the third event in the AI Readiness series. And today we're looking at training, getting people ready at the enterprise level. And I think one of the inspirations for this is I'm going to refer to a comment, and this is in healthcare. This is in oncology. A oncologist told me, Jose, we're in choose your own adventure mode. We There's no training, there's no support, there's no governance. We're all kind of trying to figure out how to use these tools. We're kind of expected to, but we're on our own. I mean, there are some organizations where there is a lot of governance, there's a lot of support, there's a lot of training, but most people don't work in organizations like that. So I'm going to I think people are still coming in, but I'm going to bring on our first speaker. And Hubert's Spanish better than mine. He was speaking to me in Spanish today. I said, "Can you switch to English, please?"
Hi, everybody.
And I think I remember I saw I can't remember. I saw you in a video or a post about a year ago or 11 months ago, and I reached out to you, and I think I've interviewed you once or twice about feedback and training. And I thought, and I know what really like what you're doing with future branding, so I thought I got to bring you on. And
Thank you.
this is the first speaker. This is our why. Why are we here? Why is this important?
Yes.
Oh, by the way, you can introduce yourself, Hubert. I've probably done a horrible job.
No, you did an excellent job. So my name is Hubert Evekink. It's a Dutch name. Hubert, Umberto, whatever you would like to say works perfectly fine. Together with some of the speakers, for the speaker who comes a bit later, Martin, we run a training company for proper AI use, proper AI expertise, or AI readiness in organizations. We also run open programs. So we have a lot to do with the topic here today. And I think it's very interesting because there's kind of an ideal world, Jose, where everybody would be trained from top down or from leadership out. And then there's the real world where everybody's kind of trying to get by. So let me start with the why. You asked me to start with the why. We believe that a well-trained enterprise organization, being profit, non-profit, public, is able to create the value they need from AI, but at the same time, kind of managing the risk which comes with working for AI, right? We know that an organization would need the technical infrastructure, it would need, the platforms, it would need the data, it would need the organization, it would need the people. And we're talking here about training these people here today. So that's extremely important because that means you can actually pluck the fruits of AI in a much better and faster fashion.
I think the one thing that really struck me in the conversations I've been having is even people who um, they're early adopters and they're very confident, but they're almost like sometimes people can be too confident. They don't Just because you're confident early adopter doesn't necessarily mean you know as much as you think. And I see some people making some big mistakes. I work in oncology, so you see people, they're using these tools, but they're maybe not using them in the right way. And they get surprised. I mean, I spoke to one, I'll give you an example. An oncologist, he was very excited. He loved this tool. He's using the chatbot. And then the chatbot gave him an answer, and he knew the answer was wrong because it made up a paper. and it cited him as an author of the paper. And he goes,
Wow.
well, I know that paper's not true because I never wrote that paper. He's like, wait a minute, I've been relying on this. And how long has this been going on for? And
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know, how do you train people who they don't know what they know and they don't know what they don't know?
Yes. Yes. Well, let me go back. I think we started here with kind of the individual use, right? The early adopters. And the early adopters you can roughly divide in people with some technical background who naturally jumped into this. And then you have early adopters who are naturally curious, who probably already use technology. I would probably call myself more that type, but who don't really have a good, solid technical background. So I'm talking about databases, structuring information. How does an LLM really work? I think those people were initially struck a bit with the magic and thought they had superpowers they didn't really have. Well, we could see that people with a technical background had a much better understanding of what kind of systems they were actually dealing with, and were therefore also able to manage the references and the things coming out of AI in a much better way. Right? They knew that an AI has a tendency to please you. They know that an AI has a tendency to say everything as if it's true. People who didn't fully understand the system thought they were just brilliant themselves, while other people who had a bit more experience could see what was actually happening. Now, if you looked at that then from an enterprise perspective, well, let's start with a team perspective. Now you have a group of people where some people are early adopters and think they're doing the right thing. Some people are early adopters and really are doing the right thing, and some people haven't adopted at all. That means that some people can work a bit faster, other people don't. That also creates a dynamic where it's very actually difficult as a team to work on the workflow. So what we are very, very focused on is getting teams up to a certain level of knowledge, both on the technical side and on the human side, so people can actually talk to each other and work together. Because some people running and other people stalling doesn't produce any type of productivity.
The what advice would you have to people who are training that kind of those kinds of people?
So what we found is that we initially, when we started, we were a bit afraid of starting at the beginning, because we thought that people who already were much further on would, push back and say, I already know it. But we found that getting everybody to speak the same language, getting everybody to help each other understand what all of this is about, is actually tremendously helpful for team dynamics as well. And we very seldomly had people who already were using it push back on us or be bored. So for me, the first thing to do is get people at the same level, understanding it at the same level, and using it at the same level before you start as a team using AI as a kind of a team co-intelligence.
Did that surprise you?
I think, yeah, I think it surprised us, because we've done, I come from the training land and I've done lots of trainings, and you're always very, very focused on making sure that the people who receive the training, it's completely geared to them, right? You have different cohorts with different levels, so you can make it very, very relevant for people. But that's obviously is not possible when you train teams, because those teams will already naturally have early movers and will have people who are actually almost fighting this move. So we initially thought, like, how do we keep the early movers busy and the ones who really need to focus engaged? And when we kind of created a psychological safety and an environment where people were encouraged to help each other, it completely solved that type of what we initially thought could be a barrier.
Every new audience will surprise you. That's my
Yes.
new slogan.
Yes.
um, why is this so important to get right?
Well, I think what we're now seeing, right, is that a lot of companies have been investing a lot in, buying maybe the platform, investing in getting the stuff on board. And I think a lot of leaders and shareholders thought, well, if we buy it, it will come and naturally people will start to use it. And I think we're finding out that, yes, you have some people who use it, but it's very asymmetric and it's not delivering the results that companies and organizations had hoped it would deliver. And that has to do with pure revenue numbers, right? In the end, everything you put in needs to come out. And we've seen now from the research that, a lot of these projects actually fail. I don't want to talk about numbers, but let's say it doesn't even come close to matching the investment. So the problem now is that companies will be losing, I think, a lot of confidence. A lot of leaders will be losing a lot of confidence in AI. And the naysayers and the ones who are pushing against it will say, I told you, it's not that important. It doesn't actually deliver that much. Actually, what we were doing is absolutely fine. So a promising transformation to using extra intelligence in a more productive way could actually be rolled backward again, because we can't show that it actually delivers on the short term. And I'm not even talking about the longer term, right? Because the longer term is building an organization which is actually sustainably more innovative than other organizations, with all the benefit for clients or patients or
I think there
consumers.
might be another dynamic coming where organizations that have gotten this right are kind of going to surge forward like dark horses and eat other people's lunches.
Yes.
Then they'll be like, oh, what? But we're going to bring Hubert back for the group hug in about 40 minutes. Oh, sorry, 30 minutes, I should say. Until then, hasta pronto.
Hasta pronto. Gracias.
And now our second speaker, the how. And for how, Amani, Alabed, this is where we dig into the details. How do we do this? And Amani, I've hosted you a couple of times. I think I've hosted you twice before.
Yeah.
And Amani takes a very academic approach, evidence-based, and actually, I'm doing a terrible job introducing you, Amani. Do you want to introduce yourself? I want to.
Right. Thank you, Jose. Thank you. My name is Amani Alabed. I'm an AI researcher. So I do come from academia, but I also do come from industry. So I have worked before in the industry. I do a lot of community initiatives where we also train users on how we can use these technologies, bringing them from theory to action-based workshops. So we do a lot of workshops teaching them the general platforms, the dedicated platforms to the use cases that they might have in their work place, and just to make them feel a bit better, just more empowered and more knowledgeable about what is it that they need to know from this technology, from limitations to benefits and so on.
So I want to start off. Weber gave us the warning. Some of these projects don't go very well. Can you give us a case study of a training program that went really well? And if you can kind of unpack it, so we can learn from it.
Yeah, so when I was researching these cases, one of them that really stood out to me was the Deutsche Telekom case, where they collaborated with McKinsey and Quantum Black to train over 15,000 agents that they have in their customer service centers. And Deutsche Telekom serves 23.5 million customers, around 300,000 organizations. So we're talking here about mass upskilling to their employees. Their challenge was that the agents that they have had different or inconsistent performances. And that's why customers were complaining. The traditional training that they were exposed to was generic. And this is very normal because here we're talking about the training that is dependent on the supervisor. So there's no individual skill gap analysis to what each individual might know, might not know. How is it that they can solve these issues? Now, a big part of this case study is that the organization had access to data, which is what is needed to make sure that you know how to train your employees. Because say, for example, you're following a generic approach, you might still get some kind of results, but it's not as good as when the data is coming from your own center. So they were mining data from their call centers. They were looking at the calls that their employees were having. So here we're dealing with a huge number of data, and the data was there, but it was not utilized by the agents. So that's when AI would come into place, and that's when McKinsey was working over a couple, I think 4 months to develop an MVP where they are able to put this data into use and develop an AI-powered coach for each user. And this AI coach would address these skill gaps. So they would talk about, or they would tackle the billing issues, the empathy, which is extremely needed in customer service. This is what we need if we were dealing with the humans. And they were providing through the AI coach personal dashboards with skill transparency. Now, if we're talking about supervisors that would train users, we're looking here at different forms of biases of what the supervisor might find useful or might find effective. So the system here that they built was not or did not have bias as a supervisor would have, which really helped in trying to assess the individual skills each one of these employees would have, and then it would provide micro trainings. It would give also training nudges delivered in real time, so similar to what we have in an Apple Watch and so on. It would give us, based on our data, what we might do to become better. And in that sense, here, for example, it would analyze what an employee would have not scored well with, and then throughout the day, it would give it, for example, some kind of training on becoming better at that specific gap. Or that specific skill, and then a couple of days later it would test their knowledge. So in that sense, we are trying to follow up with the progress of these people. So in that sense, the success here from this training program enabled Deutsche Telekom to reach different customer outcomes. So I have here reported 14 points in likelihood to recommend. So the net promoter score was increasing. And here we can also talk about the operational efficiency. How much are we really empowering our employees to become better at what they are doing? Just really focus on what matters the most rather than just receive generic training and so on. And another KPI I really love talking about is the human side of AI. What is it that's actually benefiting us? I did mention it in one of the webinars before. I talked about GitHub and how they were incorporating AI in the daily processes or as a co-pilot for coders and so on. So part of it is that employees were having high confidence in using the technology or actually addressing the customer complaints. They were more engaged with the training, and they also had reduced frustration. And this is because the mapping out of the journey of how this use case happened was going over different levels. So the first thing, they did not just roll out any AI program that is generic. The outputs of that personalized coach was validated by trainers before it was rolled out to the employees, just to make sure that the outputs there are correct. And then they measured it on several levels where they were measuring how skilled the employees became, the behavior. So what was the KPI? That was measured. So, for example, more first call resolutions. And finally, there were net promoter score gains. Customers were much more likely to recommend Deutsche Telekom to other friends or family or whatever it is, their network. And they also were happier with the brand. So that is, in summary, what the case was about.
That really resonated with me. I used to work customer service a long time ago, I want to tell you a story. We were supposed the corporation wanted us to give out $1,500 worth of refunds a month. But if you went over this number, that's a problem. People were afraid to give out any refunds. So most people only would just say no, no, no. They'd only give out $100 or $200 because they didn't know how close they were to the limit. So they didn't get any feedback. You know, it's like you can actually give people refunds. You're not going to be punished. But because they don't know where the line is and they're not getting that feedback, they fall into these patterns. So that what you just said there really resonated with me. And we're running out of time. But I wonder do you mind if I ask you one more question?
Yeah, of course.
I've got some other questions for you, but can you paint what does a successful training program enable organizations to do in terms of just using the default?
And the default general AI tools, you mean, or
the status quo in terms of like, well, let me ask you a different question. How can orgs measure and manage the effectiveness of their training programs?
So I think each AI initiative that you would want to run in your organization you would need to map out the return on investment on different aspects. So one of the first would be how much is actually costing you to run this AI initiative. And then you would want to see on that basis, you would want to first say, these are the KPIs that we've had established before the rollout of the AI program. So what was the rate for the customer satisfaction, what were the transfer rates, and so on. And then you would see after this rollout, again, we talked about the different aspects of return on investment. So here we're talking about the operational costs, how much are you actually saving through AI, talking about the ones that have to do with the employees, how much more productive they are, how much satisfied they are. And I think the psychological safety point really does resonate with me. How much are we feeling safe at our jobs by using AI properly to do our jobs better rather than just using it or feeling threatened that it would be replacing us. And I think we don't have the time to mention this, but there's one critical aspect of why we need to train our employees on using AI throughout a contained environment is that we don't want our employees to be resorting to other general AI tools where they are uploading sensitive data and just risking compliance and privacy. But I think part of it is just really understanding the needs that you want within your organization and just try to design an initiative that would address these needs.
Thank you, Amani.
Thank you.
I'm gonna put you off to the side, and I'm gonna bring you back in about 20 minutes. Now, third speaker, the what? Brian. And Brian talks a lot about AI governance. And it's actually, I reached out to him a while back because I saw he wrote something about AI governance that really resonated with me. And actually, like, the first time I met you, I think properly I had an interview with you. And then it was the first webinar you appeared in, you actually went into the after party.
Yes.
And we've done a number of webinars since. Brian, I wonder if you can introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So my name is Brian Green. I live in Philadelphia. And my background is kind of diverse. I started pretty much as a data scientist in the public health nonprofit or NGO world. And then about a decade ago, I shifted to the private sector. And there I worked, I should have said, well, I said public health, but there I worked with mostly pharma. So I've done, life science, I've done healthcare, usually health data, as well as on the health tech side. So that's a little bit about my background. There's a lot more, but that's not the purpose of our talk today. So um, I've had a bunch of different experiences, I think, which has brought me to, the intersection of why I'm working in AI right now. Um, so in terms of, you know, I really appreciated uh, Hubert's kind of intro to some of the challenges around how we deal with training around AI. And it is really about getting people working together and aligning people on the same page, but also aligning people around what is the business use case and value behind bringing AI into your business, right? And so that's when people fight over the technology, what they're fighting over often is not the technology itself, is not understanding how it's going to be applied or is it useful and is it actually helping us or harming us, right? And so that's one challenge of it. The other thing I think that he mentioned that I think is really helpful, I'll come back to in a second, is really around the ROI here, right? Are people getting the kind of return that they expected or that they were promised? Um, and Amani said some things that were really important here as well, in the example that she gave. And I think it's around, again, thinking about people's confidence in using technology. People fight over technology because everyone has, even now with, a conversational agent. Some people like ChatGPT, other people like Gemini, other people like um, uh, Perplexity, like people have their preferences. And if a company locks it down and says, oh, no, we're only using Microsoft Copilot, everyone's like, oh, let down, or they have their favorite, which they're kind of arguing over. So that's a challenge that we see. To me, this all comes back to governance, right? If we start with a strong AI governance foundation, many of these problems are ameliorated, or if we will have incorporated it into the processes we need up front if we do AI governance correctly. Now, that's a challenge because AI governance means different things to different people. And if we look at just a definition that may be out there in the world, ask AI, ask Google, what does governance mean? It'll tell you, I think, a fairly simplified answer. And what governance is not is expecting that you have a piece of software that automates all these decisions for you, um, and that's good enough, right? You need human engagement, right? And so people talk about human in the loop, but it's more about human engagement throughout this life cycle and use of AI within your company. It goes beyond compliance. People think of governance as just being about compliance and audit trails. That's a part of it, but that's a small part of it. When we think about governance, we really need to think about people, processes, and performance. And if we frame AI governance and the value around AI governance, why we need it, and what it brings to the table for us as a company that's using AI, if we focus on people, processes, and performance, we can't go wrong. And the training itself, and I think this came through in both what Hubert and Amani have said so far, is the training itself, if you organize it around those three concepts, right? The people that are involved, the processes that they need to use or integrate with, the workflows, right? And then performance, the measures, the KPIs. You really, I think, are going to do a much better job of training people to utilize AI correctly within the organization, getting the kind of metrics that you need, being confident in it, not fighting, but working together towards alignment with the same business purpose. Um, so I think, you know, to me, this also comes back, the performance side is around upfront being able to adjust your expectations around AI. So, again, Hubert mentioned that people are not seeing the kinds of revenue or returns or ROI that they might have been told or promised or that they expect. That goes back to training. If you look at the most recent data, only about 20 to 30% of people say that they've actually been trained on how to use AI in their company once it's rolled out. So we know that that's a big problem. But it's also around understanding risk. And again, if you have a strong, robust AI governance foundation, you are able to quantify the risk up front. You can quantify the risk appetite. You can quantify um, understanding the risks that are specific to your organization, how to mitigate them. You can understand what these risks mean within the context of your use cases or your workflow integrations. And that allows you to, or someone like my company, Health Vision AI, can come in and help you really prepare what I call a risk-adjusted ROI. So it's about measuring the types of risk to your direct risk, right? Would you have a data loss? Do you have privacy leaks? Do you have things that are fairly easily quantifiable or things that are less quantifiable, like risk to your company's reputation? That's harder to quantify, but we can still put a number towards it. Once you have those metrics around the risk and quantifying it, you can then adjust your ROI up front so it's reasonable, and that you can measure it along the way. And going back to training, I think it's very similar because training is not a one and done, right? And that's often what also people say, like, oh, 20 to 30% are only been trained. It's not that they haven't even been trained, but they've been given one kind of intro to, and then later when they're using AI in their workflow, 6 months from now, they have questions, the training didn't help them. That's what they're speaking to as well. You need to provide ongoing coaching either to the managers, the supervisors, and I think Amani's example that she gave kind of speaks to this. Even though they used um, an AI tool to help provide this personalized training, it provided these nudges. Nudges are ways of reinforcing the learning, right? Reminders of learning, but then the coaching, the similarity of human coaching is around personalizing it to the individual and what their learning path has already been and how they've said that they're performing relative to that training path. So ongoing coaching, which I think should be human, but you could assist it with AI as well. Ongoing coaching is critical because, you know, let's face it, AI is constantly changing. So even if you've been trained, at the beginning of rolling out your AI tools, a year from now, that AI has changed, hopefully dramatically. It should be changing because you do continuous evaluation of the tools themselves, but people need ongoing training, ongoing coaching, because it's about change management, right? And the coaching is the most critical aspect to ensure that you can actually handle the change management that's required and that you're providing the appropriate support throughout the organization, throughout the life cycle of how you're using and integrating AI tools. So that's kind of, I think, a way of quickly focusing on some of the most difficult problems or challenges that we see with AI training, in businesses, irrespective of the type of business and kind of irrespective of the AI maturity level, right? So these are things that happen even with people that are early adopters in an organization or very mature systems that have, pretty robust governance systems. We still see these same challenges. Coming back to governance, people, processes, performance. Jose, you're muted.
I sneezed, so I put myself on mute. You might chuckle at this, but about just under 2 years ago, I did my first AI webinar. And back then, and the webinar was called Health Tech, AI, and Compliance. And back then, it was, okay, is it GDPR compliant? It was a European audience. It's GDPR compliant? Okay, we're done. And then about a year later, because, oh, hold on a second. Well, not even a year later, people are like, oh, wait a minute. GDPR compliant isn't enough. It's actually a lot. We're in the weeds. So thank you so much for that, Brian. I'm going to put you on park. We're bringing you back in about 10 minutes. And final speaker. I feel like a game show host whenever I say that. The proof, the choice. I call the final speaker Luke Skywalker, and Martin got a chuckle of that in the rehearsal room. Welcome, Martin.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, as a Star Wars fan, I love being Luke Skywalker. So thanks for that.
All right, so you got to blow up the Death Star now.
Yeah,
The
no problem.
and I'm wondering if you could oh, what are my questions for Martin? You so we I got to start with a something that you wrote on LinkedIn. I'm quoting you here.
Mhm.
People are curious. The need is quite clear. People want to use AI, but many still feel a little at a loss.
Mm.
What advice do you have for people who are feeling lost?
Yeah, well, first, I think it's completely normal to feel lost right now. We're in the middle of maybe the biggest technological shift of our time, and no one has all the answers. My first piece of advice would be to think of AI as a new language. You don't have to be fluent overnight, but it's enough to learn a few words and phrases to start using it in everyday life. So begin with curiosity and try AI on a small practical thing that would make your day easier. Maybe that could be summarizing a long email, planning a meeting, or testing a new idea. And once you see that work, you'll build confidence and you naturally want to explore more. Second, you don't have to do this journey by yourself. Share experience with colleagues, ask questions, learn together. I think AI becomes much less intimidating when it's a part of a team conversation instead of a individual pressure thing. I also think that comes back to something that Hubert said earlier today about creating the same language in a team. I think that is very important so that they can build that AI proficiency together. And finally, I think it's important to remember that AI is not here to replace you. It is here to amplify you. It is a tool, but you are still the brain and the creativity, and you need to do you have to do the judgment. So I think that's the center of it, finding your human edge and connecting it smartly with technology.
Excellent. You blew up the Death Star.
Hey.
Okay, so now we're at the award ceremony. Everyone's getting a trophy.
Mm.
I'm wondering if you could reflect on what the previous speakers have said. Is there anything you want to respond to
Yeah.
or tie off there?
I have a couple of points that I thought were really interesting. You said that, or you asked the questions about early adopters. Are they too confident? And I think that everybody wants to know the truth. Everybody wants to know the future. But I think that will be a mistake when we're trying to develop. When we are in a big shift like this, I think that it's important to remember that nobody knows the future and to stay curious so that we can actually change course and try to adapt instead of kind of having this fixed target and working towards that. So that's one. Another one is Amani was talking about the Dutch telecom and access to data. I see in companies that we are working with that these are one of the big kind of bottlenecks that are now showing up. People have been saving data kind of in different ways. We're working with a big company that holds or organization that has different companies in different countries. They have saved data on different kind of different ways, And to now organize that data would be one of the biggest things that companies can do to actually make that artificial intelligence work better. One more thing that I really liked about the example with Dutch Telecom is one of the things that are completely different with AI technology compared with all other technology is that it's not only that we need to learn the technology also learns us. So we have the option to actually have technology adapt to how we work, and to have those individual tailor-made training sessions for all of the people or the agents that work in Dutch Telecom. I think that is so smart when we're talking about how we're going to train AI in the future, because one of the issues that we're seeing working with teams are that they are on different levels. So in the past, we could make cohorts and kind of adapt the levels that way. Now we're not having that chance, so we need to work with teams. We need to work with organizations. Then you will meet different levels, and to actually have the training tailor-made, that is very, very important.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Everyone gets a trophy. Group hug. Everyone gets a medal except Chewbacca. I'm still upset about that. And I got a question from Mohammed. And actually, the reference might be lost, but this came in about 20, 30 minutes ago. Like Siri, is there a common standard for AI readiness? Siri is an acronym, SIRI.
Mhm.
Does that ring a bell to people? I don't know what that is. Siri is
I think it's a smart industry readiness index for manufacturers. I think that's correct.
Smart
Please.
Industry Readiness Index.
Mm-hmm.
It's the world's first independent digital maturity assessment for manufacturers.
Mm-hmm.
Is there?
So I think I'm happy to take that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so there are different models that we've seen over the past year on how you can tell whether an organization is actually ready to use AI or no. And I think we did talk about them before. But for this question specifically, we have different ones. So we have the first one is Gartner's AI maturity model. And I think this is the one I reference to when I do talk about how ready we are. It basically tells us first that companies could be in the aware phase. And here we're talking about people still exploring the potential of using AI in their work, but they're still not acting on it. And this is the case that we've seen here. And I think Brian reported that of how we're ready as employees, but our organizations are not ready yet. So this is the first one. And I think the other stages would be how active we are. And this is where we start piloting some experiments on how we can use AI. And I think we've went through different ones. So maybe using chatbots and the medical sector for customer service and so on. But this is one point I actually raised before, is that you don't want to focus on projects that would not yield the highest value for you. So you're not there to just create chatbots that will not bring money to your business. You might want to create AI systems or embed AI systems that would give you access to leads, to high or qualified leads and so on. So that's one. And I think we then move to the operational, which is talking about how we embed AI in different business processes. And I think this is what Deutsche Telekom has been doing. So how is it that we can use it for the sales processes or customer service processes? We then have the systematic phase, and this is where we are scaling it across different units. And this is where governance happens. So everything is governed by actual guardrails and so on. And finally, I just have it here next to me. So the transformational, and this is where we are enabling through AI new business models. And one of the examples I can think about would be how it's not a new business model, but how, for example, Adobe was using the Firefly, the new program of how you can use generative AI in your Photoshop, but by monetizing the service. So again, getting money through AI. So this is the one that I think I'm very comfortable giving examples on.
I just want to jump in there quickly because I think this is one of the big problems that we see with implementing AI. Companies implement systems and they think that employees are going to just take it up and start running. And that is the wrong way to start. You need to define the problem and which problem are you going to solve with AI before you're going to implement it. And then you can also do training in a systematic way to solve that problem, and you can measure it by KPIs. And so I think that this is so important for leaders to remember. And one more point about leaders. We were talking about that people don't get AI training, but we also need to remember that the leaders don't have AI training. So it is, of course, the leader's responsibility to implement it, but they need to go and actually have help and not just buy a system and think that will solve everything.
Can I throw a curveball? And there may not be an answer to this. And this is kind of going again. I'm going to bring up oncology again. I'm sorry, I probably brought up 3 times. Not an enterprise, professional organizations. So a lot of people in oncology, they might work for a small community hospital. They might have an individual practice, but they're in the United States. There's these guideline organizations that publish guidelines for oncology practice. For, if somebody has this kind of cancer with this mutation, we recommend this, we recommend that. So a lot of people in these professional organizations, they're saying, okay, tell us how to use AI. We're going to wait for you to tell us. And the guideline organizations don't want to say no. But they don't have, people are looking to them.
Yeah, they don't have the competence
for guidance.
Right.
And they're like, and they're also, there's more than one, so they're competing with each other. They don't want to admit they don't know. They don't have the resources.
Exactly. That's
And I don't want to name names, but one of them said, oh, okay, we found the solution. And then they published one, and it was a 2-page system prompt in Google Gemini, which they released, and they said, and they released with massive fanfare, and then people were like, "Oh, great!" And then like, "Oh, what?" And so, and that just happened a month ago. I'm not talking about the distant past. So these professional organizations, a lot of them are being like put on the spot, and they don't want to necessarily say no. So I wonder if you could give advice, because I'm actually meeting one of them soon. People in professional bodies who are looking to their membership, or their membership is coming to them for advice and guidance and training, and they're like, they don't want to say no. They maybe don't want to admit they don't know, but they're expected to do something. They're expected to provide some kind of training, some kind of advice.
Yeah.
Anyone want to tackle that? I know that's
I want to tackle that. And just a quick comment. It is selling snake oil if you're not, if you don't have the competency to actually train people. So then you need to actually say no, and you actually need to go and do your skill up for yourself to provide that, because that is the ethical thing to do. And I think that this is also one of the problems that we're seeing, that there are people that are delivering training on AI, but they really haven't mastered it themselves.
Well,
Yeah, I
maybe.
think that that's a big. Go ahead.
No, sorry, Brian. No, I just wanted to, maybe pull it even bigger, right? Leadership teams who push this to their organization without knowing what it actually does themselves. Boards who put a lot of pressure on leaders who don't know how to use it. I think what Martin said as well is these are the people who need to spend some time familiarizing themselves and actually solving some problems with AI to be able to do that in a consistent way, and then work with good trainers. But it's very difficult to motivate others and to really inspire others if you don't know what you're talking about, and if you have never done it yourself.
Brian, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple challenges. Like the example you brought up speaks more to the challenges within healthcare in general in the US and the fact that there is so much dissemination of expertise, fracturing of authority, right? So yes, we have lots of associations who are traditionally nonprofits and way underfunded, right? That are the arbiters of these guidelines, like NCCN as an example, National Comprehensive Cancer Centers, incredible guidelines, but they don't have money to do something that would involve AI, right? And if you look at the flip side, who's involved in AI? I'm involved in a national organization that I won't name, but it is dealing with looking at AI within healthcare, making recommendations, that sort of thing. It is completely, unfortunately now, taken over by big tech, right? They're not the ones to lead this. I'm sorry. They don't know anything about healthcare. Every time that they've gone into healthcare, they've failed miserably, right? Because they just dump money and think that the way that you do big tech will work within healthcare. Well, it won't, right? Particularly because of this, in the US at least, this incredible fracturing of the system and who pays for it, who leads it, who runs it. It's very fractured and disseminated, and frankly is different in every single state, right? So we've got 50 different, it's like the EU and thinking you're going to do something for the entirety of the EU. No, it's going to be country or sector specific or whatever, right? You can do some things that are centralized, but the majority of the things still have to take place at a localized or health system level. And I think that's the part of why it's challenging to do this with a new technology, which, let's face it, it's not about the technology, as I think we're hearing today. It's about the people, the processes, and the performance. And if you focus on the technology itself, you're going to fail. Because you have to focus on how it's integrated, leadership, the how it's being rolled out, the training, the people involved. So, I come back to the central question for me, which is when I think about readiness, and like I think about, you know, as I said this before with Jose on a different call, but I said, like my first thought is you go into a room, you go into a business, you go into any new situation, you're like, why is nobody ready? Right. And it's astounding. And I stole that line from Devil Wears Prada, right? But it sticks in my head because it is so pervasive. You go into this situation and people are not ready. And so you think about why. And it's the things we've already talked about, the alignment to business goals. And I think as Martin said, you start with what problem are you trying to solve? You may not even need AI for your problem, right? But if you're already dealing with AI, you will be dealing with AI in the future. So you need to align with the business goals. They need to focus on, as Amani and Hubert said, in terms of the data, right? We have the ability to leverage data for the first time in some companies in very impressive ways and use AI to tailor it to business problems, use cases once you've identified them, and use that first party data to truly and make a difference. But the quality of the data is just not there. Most companies are not prepared to utilize that data robustly within an AI, in a small language model or other type of architected, agentic AI or other architected system. So that's not ready either, but it has potential. And then finally, the training and the people involved, right? If we don't have people that are ready, and we know that they aren't, how do we make that happen? How do we achieve it? Well, we've heard a lot of great solutions to that. For me, that's all under this, AI governance framework. Again, people don't think about it, but training falls under that because it is around people, processes, performance. And, as I said, if once you think about how you do that, you're adjusting it for a risk understanding, then you have the ability to have a true ROI, risk-adjusted ROI that incorporates all these pieces. And, each of those is a lever to try to measure and achieve an actual ROI for your business.
Thank you. All right, we're going to start going to final word. Amani, I wonder if you can give us your final word. You sum up.
Yeah. So I think my final word would be that AI could be adapted to say data scarcity. So as just building on what Brian said, because we can use different machine learning models to create a new data. So here we can think about synthetic data, few-shelf learning, whatever it is that we can be doing just to gather data and apply it in our organization. So there are different ways around it. But I think the real bottleneck would be the people. If they're not ready, even if you have the perfect system, the perfect AI training material and so on, if they're not there to absorb it, then it will be in vain.
Thank you. Hubert.
Yeah, just building on what Amani said, we are human, and humans have different ways of dealing with stuff. Just because we have everything and we have the KPIs doesn't mean it comes. We many times see that humans fight things for non-rational reasons because of fears or because we're not as good as we think we need to be. I think we need to be very aware that we also need to go into those more emotional levels to take away the barriers. And one of the things I really like what we discussed today is find real challenges to work on. Let people work on the challenge, let them work with systems, let them make lots of mistakes, let them talk to each other, but find something they really care about, because that's how you kind of make an emotional connections with something for some people feels very, very cold. But if they suddenly see that something comes out which is of use to them or their teams, then you've got a hook. And then it's also much easier, as Brian said, to keep training and to keep up to date and to do everything you need in a world which is constantly changing.
Martin, Luke, use the force, Luke. Let go.
Yeah. Well, I just saw in the latest report now from World Economic Forum that they mean or that they think that 95 million roles or work will disappear by 2030. But they also think that it will create 170 millions new roles. So of course we need to take these numbers. Nobody knows, but I think that it's important for everyone to remember that maybe the most important thing that you can do is to learn how to change, so learn how to learn and learn how to develop. You need to become future ready, and you can use AI to help you become future ready. So when your role change, you can actually change with that role instead of being sidelined.
Brian.
Well, I think I gave my closing statements a minute ago, so I'm good. But I just want to say this was great. I have to drop off now because I have a 11 o'clock
Oh, webinar's over in 1 minute.
hard stop. Well, the other one starts at 11, I should say. So hard stop. So I'm dropping off now, but it was a great conversation. I just dropped my link there since someone asked about a readiness assessment. So if anyone wants to reach out to figure out how to use readiness within your context, happy to do that discovery session with you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for
Thank you.
the panelists, the speakers. The learning never ends, but the webinar does. Well, take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.